Yeah, thank you very much, Adrian, for this very kind invitation. I am very happy and proud to have the possibility to speak in your Slovak Aesthetics Forum. Thank you very much for having invited me, and thank you all for attending. So I don't see you, but I think that you are seeing the slides. If you have some problems with the slides, you simply tell me, and I try to solve it. Okay. So this talk is actually based on the chapter I have written for the this Routledge Handbook of Philosophy and Improvisation in the Arts. The chapter is devoted to improvisation and artistic photography, and the talk that I will offer to today is follows maybe this chapter, and try to summarize the main points of the main ideas that I try to argue in this text. Okay, so photography seems to have a close relationship with improvisation in the performing arts. From the semiotic point of view, both an improvised performance and a photograph are deictics. As music, sorry, here I have as music, okay, as music semiologist Eero Tarasti claims, improvisation as an utterance is always deictic, that is, an act that points to the moment and place of uttering. Improvisation is a trace of a performance situation in the performance itself. In other words, improvisation refers pragmatically to the situation of improvising, inserting it into the process of artistic production as its constitutive element. Improvisers interact with the spatio-temporal conditions in which they produce their artworks and performances with fellow performers and spectators, as well as with the artistic media and instruments they have at their disposal. These interactions are not only the ways in which an action plan is implemented, but they challenge the control the artists have over their actions, inviting them to offer ad hoc responses to adapt plastically to the changing environment, or even to change the environment through their action. Therefore, the artist's action occur within a situation that not only provides the contextual framework from a pre-planned performance, but it is imprinted within that very performance, constitutively influencing its specific aesthetic properties. The improvised performance indicates the situation in which it is or it was produced as part of the process to which it is or was produced, and as relevant for the product experienced by the audience. This indication is a relevant aesthetic property of improvisation. Analogously, the photographic image points to the act that produced it and to its specific situation. It is a trace and an imprint not only of the object which causes it through the essential contribution of light and of the camera, but also of the photographer's situated action. The shot involves the interaction between photographer, camera, and referent, out of which the image emerges. The photographic image seems relevantly analogous to improvisation in the performing arts because it presents the singular and unrepeatable situation in which the shot was taken and of which it is a trace. If the situation of an improvised performance were different, the improvised performance would also be different. Analogously, if the situation of the photographic shot were different, the photograph would also be different. However, the relationship between situation and performance is more than a unilinear causal one. In photography, just as in performative improvisation, situationality or indexicality is accompanied by responsiveness. The ontological link between the photo and the contingent situation of production has artistic relevance because a consistent part of the image's artistic merit depends on how the photographer interacts with and responds to the situation. I contend that the image results from the photographer responsive confrontation with contingency. One may think, however, that despite the rigid ontological connection of the photographic image with the spatio-temporal situation of its production, the spectator's viewing of the photographic image is proof that she arrived too late to be able to appreciate how the situation of the photographic art contributed to the photographic image. The case is similar to listeners who approach a recording of a past musical improvisation in which the time of the improvisational process has been frozen. Even if the result of the photographer's shot is ontologically dependent on the specific time of its production, it captures time only by means of stopping and immortalizing it. Observers do not participate in the event of photographic production. The event is no longer there. The image is uprooted from the context that produced it. The co-presence of the photographer's shot with its performative situation is lost. Its absence is evidenced by the photograph. Furthermore, one might also argue that in photography, the uniqueness of the instant is shown through its potential reproduction and multiplication, whereas in live performance, uniqueness itself is the mark of an improvisation. Photographers can re-elaborate and doctor the photos, trash wrong ones, and choose which ones to exhibit. The photographer's formative work seems to consist precisely in this selection process after the shot. However, these are not decisive reasons to reject the relevance of improvisation in photography. A photo, like a movie, can be significantly similar to the recording of a performative improvisation. First, it is difficult to deny that perceiving a recording of improvised music, theater, or dance amounts to perceiving an improvisation. Even though perceiving the events through a recording is neither directly perceiving nor participating in the event, a recording can be an effective means of assessing it. So why should it be different with a photo? In fact, like the recording of a performative improvisation, the photo reveals the prior existence of what observers saw in or through it. The photo certifies or authenticates the existence of the object from which it proceeds. And more precisely and interestingly, it certifies the unrepeatable, singular, and situated interaction that occurred between the photographer's act, the camera, and the referent of the image, all of which are the elements of a now absent mutual co-presence. Second, in music, dance, and theater improvisation, the improvised performance is unrepeatable, singular, and situational, but its recording can be reproduced and widely disseminated. In the very same way, repeatability, singularity, and situatedness are essential property of the photographic act and of the photographed object, but not of the photo that can be reproduced. As observed by Dubois, the reproducibility of photography operates only in the relationship between signs, while its uniqueness concerns the relationship of each sign with the object that the photo, in itself always singular, denotes and detects, instituting a new kind of aura, the aura of the unrepeatability of the instant, which is also proper to performative improvisation. Of course, a photographic image can show or hide and alter the connection with the act that produced it and with the situation of its production, but this does not undermine the plausibility of the analogy with an improvisation's recording. The recording of music, theater, or dance improvisation can provide access to the event of improvisation, but it also manipulates by means of post-production the live improvised performance. The recording of an improvisation may testify to the ontological link of the recorded performance with its original situation, but at times it might also adulterate or hide it. But in addition to the analogy with a recording of a performative improvisation, it can also be argued that photography is improvisation to court, an improvisation in which, as in other non-performing arts like cinema and painting, it is not the coincidence between process and product that is relevant, since the observer can only perceive the latter, but that between invention and realization that characterizes the artist's actions. According to the snapshot aesthetic of instant photography, unlike posed photography, the image is improvised in the literal sense of being ex improviso. It cannot be seen before shooting, so that it surprises the photographer's gaze and she sees the result of her act only after its performance. The snapshot strikes the photographer's perception in an unforeseeable way beyond her control and intentions. One could therefore consider the photographer's act intrinsically improvised, given that the camera and the photographed event go beyond the photographer's intentional subjective control, surprising it. The snapshot unforeseeability constitutes a problem for the photo's artistic quality. The inability to foresee the result of one's shot may amount to an improvisation in the pejorative sense of the lack of preparation and organization behind one's making. The pretense of seeing photographically, which means the ability to pre-visualize the image, separating the intentional creative idea from the mechanical realization of the photo, may be understood as a way to avoid this problem by overcoming the lack of control over the photographic process and its result by means of a careful preview that enforces formalist criteria on photography, thus neutralizing the specificity of the referent and its uncontrollable contingency. If one assumes that art entails the intentional activity of an artist, author, the preview of the shot may appear as a precondition of photographic artistry. Indeed, as explained by Diarmuid Costello, the artistic character of photography has traditionally been denied on the basis of two beliefs. First, art requires an agent intentionally manipulating a medium on the basis of an action plan, and two, the photographer does not properly perform an activity. Photographic seeing provides the intentional plan that allows the photographer to control her activity's results. Therefore, it seems to offer what is required for photography to be art. This position, however, faces both a factual and an ideological problem. The first factual problem arises because the effectiveness of a preview is hardly guaranteed, since the result of the shot as the exhibition of an unforeseeable real is syntactically non-programmable. Going beyond the foreseeable codes of communication, the photo emotionally pricks and pierces the observers, including the photographer as observer of her own photo, as an unintended accident. Roland Barthes referred to this effect with the notion of punctum. In this regard, photography seems rather at the mercy of chance and contingency. Yet the uncontrollability of the photographic enterprise is not a convincing reason to deny its artistic quality. In other words, photographic seeing as the intentional preview of the photographic outcome is not required for photography to be art. Moreover, rather than necessarily hindering the artistic value of photography, in some cases, improvisation can be understood as its very factual condition. So, the second ideological problem concerns the very notion of art as an author's intentional and controlled production. This idea is not indisputable, as a brief discussion of the vexata question of photography as artistic practice will demonstrate, I hope. A widespread idea since the dawn of photographic technology is that the making of photographs is, in an important sense, not dependent on the photographer. Photography has often been considered to be a sort of agent-free operation, an automatic optical, chemical, or optical electronic process that rules out a proper human contribution. According to this idea, the photo ensues from an automatic process in which the photographer's agency at best plays a minor role. The point is that, as Susan Sontag put it, photographs don't seem deeply beholden to the intention of an artist. The photographer seems to be a servant of the machine and of nature, who are the real agents of the photographic process. It is light that, with the aid of a technical device, the camera, and of the real objects placed in front of it, writes the image. Against this view, it has been reasonably argued that the photographic process does not exclude the photographer's agency. On the one hand, the camera's automatism does not rule out the photographer's intentional action. The camera's work cannot be reduced to a simple imprinting. The photo ensues from several non-automatic actions happening away from the device. The photographic process consists not only in the manipulation of light, but also in the control of chemical reactions through the use of accelerators, inhibitors, temperatures. The photographer must make decisions about setup, perspective, lighting, framing, film, paper stock, and the darkroom. So it is false to claim that in photography everything can be explained in causal terms and that intentionality plays no role in the photographic process. Intentionality and causality are not opposed to each other, actually. Intentionality is manifested in the way that several causal processes are organized for human aims by means of imagination, conception, and vision. On the other hand, compared to other image-producing activities like drawing and painting, the photographic depiction can be understood as non-intentional, in that this process reduces human control and depicts by belief-independent feature tracking that is not intentional. One may think that since actions are intentional events and photos do not result out of intentional depiction, photography does not involve the exercise of the artist's agency. Sorry. Hence, okay, sorry, I'm losing myself. Yet, a theory of action that strongly binds action and intention as their causes is not only too demanding, but unable to clarify the difference between actions and events. Yes, there is no need actually to reject automatism and chance in order to account for the intentionality of the photographic act and for the artistic character of photography. Automatism is not an impediment to intentional agency. In order for a photo to be the artistic outcome of a creative act, there is no need for the author exerting intentional control over the artwork in its every details. All that is required for understanding an event as an action is acknowledging that an agent is responsible for the event under one description that offers reasons for this claim. My point is that in this regard, the origin of the artistic value of photography is analogous to that of improvisation in the performing arts. The improviser is defined as such by not seeing what she does before doing it, Her action is not strictly controlled by an intention as its cause, otherwise, the performance would not be improvisation but the execution of a plan. In this sense, photography is like improvisation. The fact that improvisers do not completely control the action by previewing its happening, but are involved in a complex process of interactions, does not preclude that improvisation can be art in, uh, in the same way, even though the photographer does not completely preview the shot's result, which ensues from the interaction with the machine and the photographic situation. Photography entails an agency and produces images that can be artworks. It can certainly be argued that both practices, artistic improvisation and photography, place the agent's lack of control over their work in the foreground. This thesis does not challenge the artistic import of both improvisation and photography, but rather supports the view that improvisation and photography are paradigmatically artistic. In fact, by countering the view of art as controlled agency while respecting, in the already discussed way, the requirement of intentionality, artistic creativity can be thought of in terms of the artist's lack of total prescient control over their work. Otherwise, the artist's work would not result in a creative achievement. Indeed, could something completely foreseen by its author be truly creative? Uh, I don't think. I don't think so. Um, sorry. Such a position does not at all rule out that artists can work, as is often the case, on the basis of action plans. But these plans are implemented through the unforeseeable interactions that occur in the course of the artistic production. In both photography and improvisation, authorship can be understood under a model different from the idea of an artist controlling the production process in advance. It may be understood as resulting from the acknowledgement of what happened after the fact. In short, the Orthodox Creed, summed up philosophically by Roger Scruton, according to which photography is not art because the photographer does not know what she is doing properly, she does nothing. This creed can be reversed by arguing that photography can be an art if understood as an improvisational practice, and if improvisation is understood as I think it should be, as a paradigmatic kind of action and as a paradigmatic way of making art. However, this view faces another problem. The fact that instant photography as such may be generally understood in terms of improvisation seems to weaken the relevance of a specific improvisational aesthetics for photography. If every photo is somehow improvised, the specificity of an aesthetic of photography of an aesthetic of photographic improvisation risks disappearing, as when all musical, theatrical, or dance performances are understood as essentially improvised, as argued, for example, by Good and Keaton. In other words, linking photography to improvisation can be a good way to defend photography as an art. But could we find a role for a specific aesthetics of photographic improvisation? The answer, I think, is yes. Improvisation can be both the specific subject and a specific aesthetic quality of the photographic image. Improvisation is the subject or the content of the photographic image when the moment is caught by surprise, or rather when the sudden character of an event or improvised action is exhibited in the photo. Street photography enhances the artistic relevance of the ontological connection between the act of photographing and the concrete situation that is its environment, of which the acting photographer is a part, and becomes the object of the photo. The photographed subject is taken by surprise by the photographer's shot or performs an unexpected action for those who perceive it, surprising the photographer and through her the observer. This surprise is due to the instant created by the camera that sees instantaneously. A specific, valuable aesthetic role for improvisation in artistic photography may derive from stressing the occasionality of the photographic act that takes place in real time. The contingent unpredictability of the scene becomes a constituent ingredient of the aesthetic result of the photo, in that the given is signified by the very fact of being revealed to the eye, such that the chronological ephemeral instant becomes the chirological and significant moment. The photographer's attitude can be that of spying and hunting a prey to conquer, as in Cartier-Bresson's theory of the decisive moment. Its point is that the ex improviso manifestation of an event, the felicitous visual moment in the photo, requires some assistance from the preparation of the photographer and is exercise of photographic seeing. The picture has basically two elements: a premeditated geometrical scenario and the event that comes about by sheer chance. Rather than an author, the photographer is like an improvising actor who instinctually senses when the decisive moment has arrived, and by surprising life as it is happening, grasps an ephemeral event as an opportune moment for interacting photographically with the situation. The shot then results from a dialectic between mastery and chance, and between the photographer's action and the photographic event, through which an artistic grammar of contingency is elaborated. This serendipitous and unexpected revelation of the moment is made possible by the special eye that allows the photographer to see the unexpected and then photograph it, thereby performing an instant composition. Yet, the improvisational aspect of photography can also be radicalized precisely by avoiding strategies of forecasting and composition. In such a case, the photo might reveal not only that the shot takes the photographed subject by surprise, but also that the photographic event takes the photographer by surprise. In this vein, and critical of the idea of hunting the decisive moment on the basis of a photographic seeing, the Greek photographer Dimitri Mellos operates in an immersive manner by intermingling with events that the photo will reveal. As he writes, part of the perfection of a perfect street scene is its total unpredictability, the fact that it catches you by surprise. So, by definition, I would not be able to envision it in advance, nor would I want to. But in addition, the improvisational character of photography might also rely on a specific aesthetic quality of the photo that might stage the authenticity of an improvised shot through a blurry and blurred image that, by exposing the involvement of the photographic act in the photographic event, intensifies the impression of the shot's contingency and of the movement the movement of the referent, as in Anton Giulio Bragaglia's Photodynamism, and stages an improvisational approach to photographic practice. However, as this case suggests, the aesthetic significance of photographic improvisation seems to be compromised by the fact that the improvised aspect of a photographic image may be the deliberately sought result of a prepared fiction where the shown improvisational authenticity is a stage or a simulated improvisation, not an authentic one. In this regard, two different paradigmatic approaches may be distinguished. Philip Lorca's di Corcia's photos only stage seemingly sudden and accidental encounters with their reference, while Jeff Walt's cast photography, uh, chosen by Michael Fried as a paradigmatic of photography as artistic practice, reflexively exhibits the stage origin of its improvisational appearance. And just as improvisational spontaneity can be exhibited as a rhetorical topos, the decisive moment can also be treated reflexively and denounced as a kind of artistic lie by the photographic image. The declared staging of the photo as a visually rather uninteresting result of the selection of one outcome of a performative play with randomness is the way the photographic poetics of John Baldessari's Throw in Three Bolts photo series challenges the ideology of the decisive moment, not by eliminating preparation and composition, as Melos does, but by replacing the chirological time of improvisation with aleatoric indifference. In addition, the staging of the encounter with contingency reveals the artistic significance that observers assign to the improvised production of a photograph that captures, as it were, the fleeting moment. The photographic improvisation is artistically relevant when the photo is or seems transparent with respect to the improvised action of the photographic shot. And although often one cannot reliably judge merely by looking at the photo whether this improvised quality is due to a truly improvised shot or to the staging of an improvised encounter, knowing how the photographer made a photo can be relevant for the aesthetic appreciation of the image. Just as information about the improvised character of an artistic performance may be necessary for its correct appreciation, the correct appreciation of a photo may also depend on the knowledge of its mode of production. The poetic of the decisive moment, the poetics of the decisive moment are about the revelation of the ephemeral instant that surprises the observer, both the photographer and the spectator of the photo, and that the eye cannot directly grasp. The photographic act is a performance that generates an event, making it an image. Yet the photographic act may also show its performative, situated, and responsive interaction with the event it depicts and of which it is a part, thereby counteracting the idea that there is no performance of photography in photography. As performance, photography can produce and show or imply and take advantage of a dilated moment. The dilated moment of the photographer's interaction with the photographed scene and or the dilated moment of the viewer's user's interaction with the image. In particular, an accurate use of exposure in real time can generate an articulated sense of time through the artistic use of feedback from the situation to the photographic act, thus diverting the shot towards unexpected results. The improvisational aspect of photography emerges when the attention shifts from the product to the process. The scene of the image would not be and would not make sense regardless of the intervention of the photographer, whose performative past presence is exhibited in the photo. Photography becomes a performance that interacts with the shooting situation and transforms it through the composition of multiple points of view. It is the specific photographic poetics of the Italian photographer Germano Scurti, who, working with very long exposure temporalities, emphasizes by recording it is a physical, gestural interaction with the camera, and with the photography event, often an artistic performance, without being able to foresee the result of the shot, given that with very long exposure times, the display goes dark. The purpose of this action painting with camera, this is Scurti's definition, is not the reproduction of reality, but the production of an event that has value in itself, regardless of its referential meaning, as an immediate perception of life. Here, photography aims at realizing a relationship between the creative technical device and the world, no longer linked to the vision, to the gaze, to the history of the gaze, to its predatory mechanisms, to the possession and manipulation of the world, but to the blindness to its possibilities of creating care and aesthetic transfiguration in the extemporaneousness it establishes and in the area it produces, as Germano Scurti declares. The same relationships occur in the interaction with contingency at stake in improvised music, theater, and dance. The fact that in the decisive moment, the photographer is blind and lacks control over what she is doing does not imply that in the dilated moment of the process, she's not acting artistically. Intentions are not necessary condition of agency. Chance, automatism, happenstance, and improvisation do not prevent artistic achievements. I have some photos still. Okay. Another case of a dilated moment showing the relevance of the aesthetics of improvisation lies in the specific relevance of the aesthetics of improvisation for photography lies in the use made of the images. The traditional instant photo has usually had a close relationship with the contextual circumstance of its production, even in terms of the users, like family members and friends to whom it was addressed. But the pragmatic dimension of the photo is nowadays even more pervasive and intrusive. We all take and post improvised photos like selfies to indicate ourselves and our places to the circle of our real-time contacts in the virtual space of social media. In this framework, photographic improvisation may consist of performing interaction through the self-reference of the photographer in the image. Italian photographer Pietro Privitera has artistically ennobled digital photography's communicative immediacy by spreading the moment caught by the camera of a smartphone through the internet via Instagram, a sort of digital version of the Polaroid, which had already made possible the immediate vision of the snapshot, but by applying new filters that transfigure its ordinary kitschy aspect. This is another kind of photography interactive practice, but rather than exploit the specific situation of the shot, the photographer interacts with virtual collectivities as a concrete expression of current reality. Thus, the photo becomes artistic by means of exposing its participation in collective life. The total sharing of the photos, I am quoting Pietro Privitera, on Instagram develops an event that is the result not only of the individual but of an intelligent collective. For this reason, the photograph posted and shared on Instagram is already a new photograph. Every single user who shares and is shared participates in a process that enriches and enriches itself, just as happens in every real language, also and above all through the errors and imperfections of millions of anonymous contributions. This ulterior and artistically relevant improvisational dimension of photography involves both production and use in mutual interaction, at the level of collective interaction that is mediated via social media through technological devices such as smartphones, tablets, and personal computers, tools that are at the very same time the means of production, diffusion, and reception of the photographic image. Privitera's photo reflexively make artistic sense and use of the everyday practices of digital snapshot improvisation in terms of generation and circulation. Thus, improvisation in this case concerned the speed of production and diffusion, its occasional character and distracted enjoyment, but also its potential for generating communicative, visual, and verbal interactions from which its artistic meaning and identity are reshaped in unforeseeable way. Okay, I come to the conclusion of this talk. In this talk, I argued that improvisation can be artistically relevant for photography. Instant photography, as such, seems to have much in common with improvisation, in particular due to its indexical nature. This does not prevent photography from being an artistic practice. Photography seems to share with improvisation a kind of agency that cannot be described in terms of the execution of an intentional project and endowed with a crucial aspect of artistic creativity. Furthermore, photographic practice can resort to improvisation as a specific artistic resource. On the one hand, the improvisation of a photographer's shot can capture the decisive moment resulting from the encounter between the photographer and the contingent situation of the photo, even though the transparency of the photographic image with respect to the improvisational nature of the shot may be intentionally or not deceptive, illusory, or exhibited as ideological and aesthetically indifferent. On the other hand, the photo can manifest the performative character of photographic practice as an improvised interaction with the photographic scene and as an interaction between the photographer, the image, and its users through digital media. Thank you very much for your attention. As I told you before, this paper is taken from the article that I'm referring here above on this last slide. Thank you.